about a time when Jesus brought his disciples up a tall mountain. It says, and after 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John and led them up a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his clothes became radiant, intensely white, as no one on earth could bleach them. And there appeared to them Elijah and Moses, and they were talking with Jesus. And Peter said to Jesus, Rabbi, it's good for us to be here. Let us make 3 tents, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. For he did not know what to say, for they were terrified. And a cloud overshadowed them, and a voice came out of the cloud. This is my beloved Son. Listen to him. And suddenly, looking around, they no longer saw anyone with them but Jesus only. And as they were coming down the mountain, and right in the middle of that verse, as they were coming down the mountain, I was just thinking of Jesus. He wants to show the disciples who he really is. We think of Jesus born in this manger, right? Born in the manger in Bethlehem. I love it here when they do the nativity scene downstairs. I don't know if you've ever noticed. This is the only place I've ever seen it done, but there's a beautiful nativity scene here in the entry. But if you look in the manger, there's no Jesus until Christmas Eve. They say, well, Jesus wasn't born till Christmas Eve. We can't put him in the manger yet. And I always loved that. I said, because I took a picture of that. I was like, where's Jesus? But you know, before the manger, before the angel Gabriel even talked to the Virgin Mary and said, there's going to be something conceived in your womb. He's going to be the Son of God. Before that, rewind the clock. Jesus, he was in the heaven with the Father. He used to pray, our Father, where's our Father? Who art in heaven, right? That's a tall mountain, a lot taller than anything on earth. You think Mount Everest is tall, try heaven. It's tall. He's way up there on the mountain. And as the disciples went up that tall mountain, he began to reveal to them who he really was. Kind of like Superman going into the telephone booth as Clark Kent, and he rips off the clothes, and underneath you see the big ass. And as Jesus goes up there, he doesn't have to tear off his robe. His robe that becomes transformed, and it begins to shine brighter than the sun. And it says they were terrified. You know, sometimes we talk about the fear of God, and we're saying, well, it's not the same as being really afraid. Look, this verse makes it very clear. When they saw Jesus, they were terrified. But, you know, Jesus didn't reveal himself to scare them to death. He revealed himself so that they would see who he really, really was. Just like he was up on that tall mountain in heaven, he came down that mountain. It says, and as they came down the mountain, you know, Jesus didn't stay up on that mountain. He didn't stay on the mountain in heaven. It said, though he was in form equal to God, he didn't think something to be grasped onto. But he humbled himself, and he was made in likeness as a man. He humbled himself. He came down the mountain to the manger. He came down the mountain. If we read further in Mark chapter 9, we would see he came down the mountain to heal the son who was an epileptic and whose father was begging Jesus. And in fact, he first took him to church. You know, he took him to church. You know what happened when he took him to church? Nothing. They took him to church, and the disciples were puzzled. They were like, he said, I took him to church, but the Christians, they couldn't do anything with them. Jesus said, bring them to me. That's why Jesus came to the mountain. He came down that mountain. He came down the mountain for you and for me. We're just like that boy. The father had no control. He did everything that he could. He says sometimes he falls into the fire. Sometimes he falls into the water. I think he'd go into the fire. The father would pull him out, and there'd be scars. The father would be putting oil on it and bandaging him up. And he'd fall into the water, and he'd be doing resuscitation to get the water from his lungs. And he was so afraid. Jesus said, bring him to me. And Jesus healed him. Jesus came to heal you and I also. You know, as we go to a moment of communion, I want us to understand something, that as Jesus got prepared to leave earth and go back to heaven, the first thing he had to do was climb another mountain. But this mountain had a cross at the top. And there he humbled himself even further. He allowed them to drive the nails into his hands and into his feet, to press a crown of thorns upon his head, so that he could pay the price for you and I to join him. So that one day, when this life is past, we'll go all the way up the mountain to Jesus, and we'll see him as he truly is.